Well, good evening, everybody. Anyone that is here to watch us talk about Ken Follett's Fall of Giants. I'm Josh here, Red Fury Books. I'm, of course, hosting this talk, and I'm joined with Ian and Kyle here, and we are reading this series this year. And we're really excited to do this talk because just our behind-the-scenes chatter, we really love this book, and it's going to be fun to talk about it. So anyone that is here to talk about the book, we will start spoiler free. So even if you haven't read it, you can hop in. We'll talk, just the vagaries of everything and talk about the things without the spoilers. And then we'll roll up our sleeves. So when we get to that, those of you that read the book, we'd love for you to chime in. But just a quick background before I just, go around the horn. If you don't know this book, this is Fall of Giants. It is chunky. It is a huge, just epic work of historical fiction. Come on, Ian, show and tell. Yeah,
my bad.
I mean, this is a thick book. It's an epic work of historical fiction. It's the first book in the Century Trilogy, and the Century Trilogy spans the 20th century. This book is basically centered around World War I, and it follows 5 families from across the globe. And we'll kind of delve into those spoiler-free and with spoilers. But let's go ahead. Let's have Ian and Kyle start. So let's start with you, Ian. If you don't know Ian, of course, go subscribe to his channel. He has a very aspirational summer reading plan. If you want to go watch his TBR for that. He also did a recent video of chunky books. So this is kind of ties in real well. So Ian, first of all, welcome back. And just what do you think of Fall of Giants? Just spoiler free, just kind of the big picture.
Yeah, thank you for having me back on the channel. I think this is my 3rd time on the channel, maybe something like that. I've been here a couple times, so glad to be back. Yeah, I am Ian the Reader, and I read all sorts of stuff, including historical fiction, like Fall of Giants. I really enjoyed this book. It is, I think, more ambitious in some ways than the Pillars of the Earth. To mixed results. I enjoyed it a lot, but I don't know if it quite reached that best book of all time that Pillars of the Earth is for me. It's in my top 5, but compared to a lot of other historical fiction that I've read, I mean, Ken Follett is just a master. So,
is that the only other Ken Follett that you've read?
Yep, just those 2 so far.
Me too. Yeah.
And that's me. Kyle, your turn.
Hey, I'm Kyle. Thanks for having me back on, Josh. And nice to see you, Ian. Yeah, so this is also my 2nd Ken Follett book. I also like Pillars of the Earth more. However, I think knowing nothing else about a reader, I would be more likely to recommend Fall of Giants. I think it's a more palatable book. Pillars of the Earth, while great, and I think we probably all agree has deeper characters, and I really felt for that, and really heartbreaking emotional story. It also has quite a bit of terrible content that if I didn't know more about a reader, I would be a little bit more hesitant, or that it might throw them off. Whereas I feel like Fall of Giants, for the fact that it's World War I and millions and millions and millions of people died, it's pretty not that violent. And so I feel like it's way more about just giving you an overview. And I think that because it's it's telling an event that's really important and relevant to our current lives, it led to World War II, which led to the Cold War, blah, 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 blah. I feel like somebody reading it is more likely to get more real world understanding than from reading Pillars of the Earth. So for that reason, I would say if you've never read Ken Follett, I might recommend Fall of Giants first, but I do think that Pillars of the Earth is a better book for all the reasons that Ian was saying. I thought the book was great. I flew through it, and I have, at the time, 3-month-old baby, now 4-month-old baby. So the fact that I could read a 1,000-page book so fast was pretty telling. Yeah, just really enjoyed it. I felt like none of the POV characters were a drag at all, which is really hard.
Yeah, I agree. Is my mic still on?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I hit this button and it started flashing. I freaked out. Anyway, we had behind the scenes audio drama. Anyway, my overall thoughts, I was really impressed with this book. I think in my just short review of my wrap up, I called it a masterclass in plotting and pacing, because the fact that it's so big, I mean, 900 pages, there wasn't a single time where I felt that it was too slow. There was never a single time where I felt like we got away from a certain character or group of characters. And I was just really impressed with that. And I know that kind of pacing is probably a pretty subjective measure for most readers, because, people say Robin Hobb is slow. I love Robin Hobb. I don't think it's slow. So I think it's subjective, but I think even so that I think most people could look at this and realize that in reading this book, that the plotting is masterful. And this is I had to look at the shelf. This is my 7th book of Follett's I've read. I've read all 5 of the Kingsbridge novels and one of his thrillers. And
The Needle.
No, I read The Third Twin,
Oh, okay.
which was interesting. Yeah, so I've read a bit more of him, but I mean, Pillars is still my favorite. I still think that's one of the best books ever written. But this is a book that I think is very easy to recommend to a lot of people. In fact, I was talking to a cousin a couple weeks ago, and he says that he has it on constant rotation in his audiobook listening, that he's listened to it like 3 or 4 times and just loves the entire series and going through it. So yeah, I think it's a masterful thing. Let me ask you guys, because until last year, I've always thought of World War I as kind of the forgotten war, because World War II just overshadows it because it's so much bigger and maybe more compelling because it is the entire world and it's not necessarily kind of just centered in on Europe. What was all of your knowledge going in of World War I in reading this book? And did that inform kind of your enjoyment of the book?
For me personally, yeah, I knew a little bit about World War I, not too much about the key players necessarily, and kind of the chain of events. I agree. World War II, I think, gets a lot more of the attention, if for no other reason than, kind of in a horrible comparison, but in the same way that, books will stick out in your brain if they have really memorable villains. I think that there are certain names and events that are really very greatly attached to World War II, and so that kind of sticks out in people's minds, while with World War I it was less pinpointed, I guess. So it was an interesting experience. I think it was educational. I think what Ken Follett, is it Follett or Follett? That's my question. Ken F. I think what he does really well in this story is he manages to communicate, I guess, the grand scale of the war, but telling it in a way where it still feels like a very personal story. It's really
Absolutely.
about how this giant war impacts individual people, but it's hard in some ways to wrap your mind around the grand scale of it, but you get enough of it to feel it without it being really the heart of the story. I think the story is really about people that had to endure a war rather than a war itself.
Absolutely. For me, I knew a fair amount about World War I, not an expert by any means. World War II is obviously, first of all, people alive today are either have fought in World War II or had family that fought in World War II, and obviously just more emotionally charged. There's a lot of straight villainy in World War II, so it's very easy to stick out, like Ian was saying. World War I is just the more complicated war. And I've always found it more fascinating for that reason. And it's kind of morbid to be millions of people died. It's more fascinating. But in terms of the political machinations and what's going on with it, I've always found that more interesting. Maybe just because I like politicking and stuff like that. And I told both of you, but I will plug it on this. I listened to the podcast series Blueprint for Armageddon by A Hardcore History, which is 5 or 6 hour episodes detailing everything leading up to World War I and the whole thing. And that is one of the best podcast series of all time. It's well regarded for a reason, and I've listened to it probably twice all the way through. Just a really good listen. So I had a foundation in World War I, but I couldn't have told you much beyond of the particulars besides the major battles and the major powers and kind of a rough overview of how it started. So I really liked how it laid out all of the different political situations of how everybody's allies get drawn in, and how the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand seemed this, people were why would that be the thing that starts World War I? But then you have all of these different, it's well, this triggers this ally and these people have to do this, and then they have a treaty with this. And so I feel that's really hard to get across in an easy way. And so the fact that Ken can do that, and I feel in a very not bogged down manner, is very impressive.
Yeah, I was really impressed with that as well. And I also feel that that's one of the most fascinating aspects of World War I. And I had read two books by Barbara Tuchman last year, nonfiction about World War I. So it was kind of fortuitous for me going into this book that a lot of that was fresh in my brain, because all I remembered from like school or whatever was that all of the entangling alliances is basically how the war started, because everybody had to have each other's backs basically. But the way that he, again, the plotting was so superb at the beginning, and the way he was able to kind of weave that story into kind of how the war started, I thought was just incredibly well done. So one of the things that we've already touched upon, and we'll when we get to spoilers, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But that is the characterization. So Kyle, you had said something about you thought the characters were better done in Pillars of the Earth than in this one. Ian, do you kind of agree with that one, with that statement? Or
I do. I think I don't necessarily know if it's the way that it was portrayed necessarily, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the characters, and I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like a weak point for the story, because I did care about the characters. I think that it just is a little bit of a disservice to the book to have read Pillars of the Earth first, where Pillars just like, it felt like he struck gold in some ways with like the characters, both on like the ones we're rooting for and the ones we hate. Like they're very easy to hate villains and those as well. And so I think the connection, just due to kind of the circumstances the book kind of sets up in Pillars, you kind of feel immediately connected to the characters a little bit more. While with here, this is a story that I don't know. I think the character piece of it was a little bit slower to build. And so I think that like on its own, perhaps I would have like enjoyed the characters more, but having read Pillars, I couldn't help but be comparing it often to like, which one do I enjoy more? And I think the pacing is very similar. Like both of them are very long books that fly by. I think that he just has a certain magical almost connection with the characters in Pillars. And I would differentiate it between like an A+ and an A- maybe.
yeah, and I think this is a higher character count than Pillars.
Yes,
I mean,
that's what I was going to say.
It's more ambitious for sure.
It's probably been 20 years since I read Pillars, but I mean, this was
that's crazy.
Yeah, I should reread it. But I mean, this was a very large character count. I mean, he has a dramatis personae at the beginning it's like 4 pages long. Plus we are spread out. So
that was actually going to be my biggest thing. I actually love the characterization in this book. I think it was very well done. I just think it has less time for because like they're not all interacting. Like most of the people in Pillars of the Earth are living in one town, and they're all interacting, and they all have relationships with each other, that if one person does something, that not only affects that person, you know that their brother's going to be upset, and then this person. So it's like this like rich tapestry that kind of all folds together. Whereas Fall of Giants is trying to do a rich tapestry of like how the world is affected. So because of that, you know, you have like characters that are obviously connected, but even when they're connected, most of their story is set apart. So it's like the characters they're interacting with are like random people or people that aren't as important. So like I was like really invested in each individual of our like main cast, but it just didn't reach that like high emotional level of Pillars. And then also, yeah, like Ian said, there's nobody even half as hateable in this book.
No, yeah,
and in Pillars. So like that just like really emotionally charged.
There's no William,
right? Yeah, and I think also like with Pillars, it was more of like a singular event. Like it's all about the building of a cathedral, and so that doesn't really impact somebody a country away, really, at least in the moment. While with this, it's the story of this war and how it affects the world and people across the world. And so I think in some ways, it's almost like each character kind of serves as like an archetype of a specific experience that someone might have had during the war. And so I think in that way, like he makes it personal, but I think in some ways it's not intended to be as personal of like characterization as much as it is like, this is what this type of person endured in this, and this is what this kind of relationship went through because of the war and things like that. So I don't know that character was necessarily as pivotal of a goal as it was in Pillars in some ways.
But I think even a lot of there were so many characters, but I think they were still pretty vivid.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, I think of a character like Gus, who is, you know, if you name the main characters, he's, I don't know, 5th or 6th on your list, probably. I thought he was incredibly vivid. I thought he was a very realized character that I could understand him. I could see his motivations and I could kind of feel his story pretty well throughout. So yeah, it was still a good job, but yeah, perhaps not the emotional highs of that book, but then again, I mean, it's not fair to compare
They're very
anything
different
to,
in
I mean,
terms
that's
of what
like
they're
one of the
trying
best
to
books.
accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, comparing him to himself is kind of tough, but comparing anything in this genre to that book is tough. But it's there, you know, unfortunately. So, you know, unfortunately for this book, but any other things we want to talk about non-spoiler before we dig into spoilers?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say real quick. I think Fall of Giants is one of the best historical fiction books I've ever read. Like, yeah, we spent a lot of time just now like comparing it to Pillars of the Earth, which is maybe unfair. But I've read quite a bit of historical fiction, and I would put this up there with like some of the best I've ever read for sure. Because when I read historical fiction, there's like two major things that I want to get out of historical fiction. One, I want to be entertained. Like, if I didn't want to be entertained, I would just read a history book. But the second thing is I also want to learn about the period. Like, I usually do like a historical fiction, and then if it does its job, then I go read some history. And like when I finished this book, the first thing I did is read a nonfiction about the Weimar Republic, which is the bridge in between this book and the next book. So I kind of like caught up in Germany for when we start the next book, just to kind of like get some like perspective of what happens then. So it's like it got me in the mood to learn more about this, which is what I think historical fiction that's really good can like really elevate. And now I have like a template in my head because I'm going to get more emotionally attached to a story than just like, and then, you know, they went to the Somme and millions of people died and all quiet on the Western Front and all that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, but now I like have this in my head. So it's like whenever I learn more about World War I have this as like a background, and that really helps me. And one other non-spoiler thought that it's just like the tiniest gripe, just like the tiniest, it's not real. The Kingsbridge books continuously go further in time, and I think the last one goes into like the 17 or 1800s, and then he always like skips like 150 200 years. I just think he should have connected these, like just smallest, like not anything important, not anything major, like just like one of the like English soldiers with Billy or something is just like he's from why am I blanking on the town? I want to say Stonehenge. That's not it. What's the name of the town?
No idea.
Well, Kingsbridge, right?
Kingsbridge. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Duh.
Oh,
just like I'm from a town called Kingsbridge or whatever, and then there's a giant church there or whatever, and then people are just like, oh, they're just something small.
I misunderstood what you said. You wanted an Easter egg for Pillars of the Earth or the Kingsbridge series in this?
Yeah, because it's like now we've transversed the whole.
Yeah, that's the Cosmere in you. That's the Brandon Sanderson fan in you. Let it go.
No, it's actually not. It's literally not, because he's the one doing it. He keeps adding every 200 years the next book. And then now it's like, we got a book in England.
If you say so.
Maybe he has one more planned. I mean, well, I guess the last one, no. The last one was Battle of Waterloo. So, yeah, I guess he missed his opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... I was kind of curious, actually. So, I actually talked about this a little bit in that Big Books video that I made recently. Like with Pillars... I've read it only Pillars of Kingsbridge, and it felt like a conclusive enough story that like I definitely want to continue because I love his writing, but like I didn't feel compelled necessarily to pick up book 2. I think you can just read book 1 and be fine.
For sure.
Fall of Giants, how this series, if somebody's watching who doesn't know, is set up is it follows these different families in different countries throughout these different wars in the 20th century. So we've got World War I in book 2, World War II in book 2, and World War I in book 1, World War II in book 2, and then in book 3 we have, I believe, the Cold War.
And like the civil rights movement and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. So this one is, I mean, you know, I suppose in theory you could read book 1 on its own and feel that it's just, you know, succinct enough because it just encompasses that one war. So if you just want to read a book about World War I, read Fall of Giants. But it continues the story of the families, and there are existing characters in this book that I presume will be in book 2.
I have some gripes about this when we get to spoilers. This is one of the things that
I know what you're thinking. But I would just ask to you all, do you feel like if somebody wanted to, they could just read Fall of Giants and get enough of the series to be satisfied?
I think so. I think it's also obvious that some of their stories, even though, you know, we're going to flash ahead a few decades, I think some of their stories still aren't quite done. I didn't feel a ton of closure with everybody.
Right.
And I think that's because there is more, but I think you could read it. You could certainly read it as a standalone. It has a great ending, and you know, it does end the story of World War I and all of these characters. But I suspect, like you haven't read the other Kingsbridge novels. You'll see descendants, but they're all really standalones,
Right,
basically.
yeah. It's more like,
think-
my ancestors built this cathedral
Yeah,
rather than like my
yeah.
dad.
I think this will be a little bit closer just because like it'll be like the parents. Like I think it'll be much more like the main characters just become the supporting cast and then the kids become the main cast is what I'm expecting. I think I'll be able to answer this question better once we start book 2.
Sure.
My instinct is that it probably is fine. Like I think some of the stuff near the end is just like, oh yeah, and then we're gonna go do the thing that's in, like it's like, oh yeah, now it's like this time in history. So that could be continued on the next book, but if you never read the next book, it could just be like I'm thinking primarily of the Russia plotline. The Russia plotline ends in a really weird spot from a character perspective. But if you just finished the book and you just like knew like the vaguest amount of Russian history, you'd just be like, oh, it's just insinuating to us it's going to do the next thing in Russian history. So like I feel like if you just wanted a book about World War I, you'd be fine. But I might read book 2 and be like, oh, but like the way that dovetails into it is like really, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But I imagine it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think this book has more to do with history than Pillars does, is what it comes down to. Like, this is more of like a historical fiction to its core, while in some ways, like Pillars uses the historical setting more as like a backdrop for like the drama that he wants to tell. So,
yeah, that's a great assessment. And this one also, we do have. Well, you'll see later in Kingsbridge, you'll occasionally get historic figures, and there were a decent amount in this book as secondary characters. So it definitely felt.
Historical note at the end was interesting, where it's like he basically was like, I would only include like a conversation with a real person if I felt like that person could conceivably have been in that place and said that thing at that time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have included it, which sounds basic, but I've read so much historical fiction, and sometimes they're just like, and then Julius Caesar showed up. Don't worry that he was actually in Gaul during this time. He's just totally here for this whole novel. Like, it's like, no, like, no. So I appreciated that he like really tried to like do as much as he could.
It felt like more speculation rather than fan fiction, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Before we jump into spoilers, do we want to talk about our schedule for book 2 in case anybody wants to catch up?
That's a great idea. Yeah. So we're going to read book 2 in August, right? Yeah. We're going to read book 2 in August. So we'll probably start sometime in the month. So we'll probably have a chat end of August, early September, something like that. And then book 3 is going to be in November. So kind of read a chunker, 2 months off, read a chunker, 2 months off, and then finish up the series. So if you are reading along or you want to read along, you can certainly jump in. Once again, as we're closing out the spoiler free, this is chunky book, but this is chunky book that reads fast. It really does. And the pacing is just superb. It's one of the hallmarks of Ken Follett, I think, is just because he started off as a thriller writer. He knows how to keep that plot moving. So it's really a quicker read than the size. So if the size of the book intimidates you, I don't think it should. I think it's a book you can easily pick up and get through it pretty quickly.
Very digestible. Yeah.
I've been reading the new like Brandon Sanderson, but actually Peter Arulian book that's 350 pages or whatever, and that feels like cutting myself with glass every time I read 2 pages. So
oh no.
Fall of Giants is long, but you can read it fast. So
no, I had the same thing. I read a 300-page Michael Moorcock that felt like 3 times as long as this thing. So all right, well, let's do spoilers. I'm going to put a banner up in case anybody doesn't get the point that we are in spoilers. And one thing I said that we do is we have the 5 countries, so we can kind of work our way around the 5 countries and talk with talk about the book based on the characters. So I'd like to start in Wales because probably my 2 favorite characters were the same family in Wales. So that would be Ethel and Billy Twice. So I loved both of those characters.
Or Billy with Jesus, right?
Yeah. What was he? He was
Billy Twice and then Billy with Jesus, I think. Those were his 2 names.
Yeah.
But those were probably my 2 if I had to rank my characters.
I think those are my 2 favorites too.
Yeah.
I would probably go. I mean, I just really liked Ethel and what was his name? I liked Grigori and like that. I didn't like Grigori very much, but like that whole storyline.
Oh, I liked Grigori.
Grigori's the good one, isn't he?
Lev is a piece of shit.
Okay,
sure.
yeah, no, I did like Grigori. I liked Ethel and Grigori, and then Walter, Ethel's love interest. Yeah, I liked him a lot
I like
too.
Walter a lot too.
Yeah, and
Walter's was
No,
probably
Walter was with Maud.
Walter was with
Yeah.
Maud. Oh, Ethel was with Fitz. That's who it was. Yeah, I did like.
Yeah,
That's
Fitz-
what it is.
Fitz sucks,
It's been
yeah.
a month since I read it, and that's too long for me. So I'll catch up. But yeah, I liked Maud and Walter's storyline, and I did like Ethel, and I did like.
You know what? Maud is actually probably my third favorite character. I really like Maud. I feel like she bucks a lot of stereotypes of like who would be that character, and like I liked her relationships were maybe more dynamic with other people than, or maybe like more complex is the word I'm looking for, because like, you know, her and Ethel have that like servant mistress relationship that kind of is friends, but then over time it's like they just become these like suffragettes together, and then
But then at the end, it also like I didn't like the little divide that came between them.
I'm thinking that's something that's going to be followed up in the next book because they're both going to be in politics. But I don't know. I agree. It was kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
What did you think of that, Josh?
See, I liked the class dichotomy.
Okay.
Because I think sometimes I mean, I didn't like that split, but I liked seeing that in this book so much because I think we don't think of that as being something in the 20th century. And it still was. I mean, obviously, we have that. We think of this more back in the 19th, 18th century where we have, you know, the serfs and the things like that. But even here, we still have, you know, like we have, you know, to get into England, we have Fitz, who's this horrible person, but he's a noble, so he can do whatever the hell he wants. And, you know, thinking about this being early 1900s, I mean, I think it was good that we had that inclusion. And for me, like the split with Ethel and Maud, I think it was a direct result of that, of them just being different classes. And frankly, as much as I love Maud, her being, you know, feeling that her way was the highway because she was superior to Ethel, is how I felt that split went.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I was viewing it more like that's always what was an undercurrent in all of their interactions, but I was viewing it more of I would view the general theme of the book as like, you know, the working class takes over from the monarchies and the empires, and which is kind of what happened in World War I. That's why it's such an easy theme to come out in a book about this. You know, like we lost, like I think it was 5 empires across this time, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, people became democracies. A lot of like, you know, there was the Russian Revolution right after, all this kind of stuff. And so I thought that was just like an easy theme to happen, but within that, there's a lot of infighting just naturally amongst people, and we still see this today, and like in the civil rights movement in the '60s, of like dynamic change versus incrementalism. And I think that Maud is really incrementalist, and Ethel wants dynamic change, and that definitely is informed by their background. But I was viewing that more as the direct opposition of those two concepts, because you have like Russia, that's a dynamic change. They overthrow. There's a revolution. And then you look at England. England doesn't have that dynamic change. England is incremental over time. They get things are a little bit more fair. Parliament changes a little bit more. The monarchy gets a little bit less power over time and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like warring those two ideas. As I'm talking about it, I actually think I like the scene more than I thought that I did. But I that's what I saw, is it's like, because Ethel wanted rights for women to vote, every woman over the age of majority, and Maud's like, oh, if we get a little bit now, then we can get more later. And Ethel's like, that's not enough.
No, that's a great point. And I mean, just thinking of those, I'd never heard those terms before, like dynamic versus incremental.
There's a better word. Dynamic is not the official word. I couldn't think of it, but incrementalism is like a political thought, like of like just the, you know,
like slow change
better
over time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then I can't think of what the opposite is in political speak, but.
No, and I mean, that's something you see today as well. Of course, you know, you see the people that want the immediate change and the people that are okay with the baby steps along the way. I wonder if that's a theme that'll permeate the series, because especially if the third book does
and the third
go into civil rights movement, because that seems like that could be something that comes back.
I imagine. Yeah.
But I think just thinking of it in that lens, it makes sense for each of those characters to have that perspective, because the one who's the noble class who's doing real well doesn't necessarily want like drastic change. And the one who is the lower class obviously wants drastic change.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I also think there's a bit more idealism too, because like I can't remember the scene exactly how they go, but I think Maud's whole defense is that it's like, no, like this is good. Like women will start voting and then we'll get in and then we can usher in more change. And like the men will totally, once the men see that some women are voting, they'll just be like, okay, with all the women voting. And then you have Ethel being like, no, like they'll give us this to shut us up. And so there's that like inherent cynicism that would come from the lower class being oppressed for their whole lives that I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I found it's interesting. It makes sense here. One of the things I didn't like in a previous novel of Follett's, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there is a novel of his where plot conveniences, like all of the characters just kind of converged on one thing, and it kind of drove me crazy. But here it made more sense. And one of the convergences for me was Billy and Fitz being on the front lines together, which, you know, not even knowing about the Ethel situation, I thought was just a fantastic thing. And then you see that dynamic, of course, in a situation like that, where it's much higher stakes, you know, not that women's suffrage is lower stakes, but like life or death front lines. And Billy and all the people are seeing that the nobles are not necessarily very good at being officers. And I love the dynamic of them together. And it made me hate Fitz even more, but and I think that's
everything with Billy in that part was great. Like Billy's
the trial and everything
started. Yeah,
that was a really good scene. Yeah, I agree, and I think that it did a really good job of I guess finding both the ways that they were brought together on the same side and on different sides. Like I think there was a scene where Walter and I think it was Fitz are on opposite sides of a battle, and they end up like coming into contact with each other. I think it was over Christmas time, perhaps.
This was really cool. That's like a real thing that happened, and
I remember that's one of the few things that I was like, okay, I did know this about World War One, and I think like getting to see two of our POV characters who have significant ties to each other, like that kind of pre-existed before this war and before they were torn apart, like it really brought a certain like levity to the situation that like wouldn't really have been there if it was just like some random guy. He's like, oh, I knew that guy back in school or something. It's like, oh no, these are two of our POV characters. We saw them interact before the war, and now we're seeing them in the midst of the war, and they still do care about each other, even though they're on opposite sides of this thing. So I like the way those plot conveniences took place in ways that were very, very intentional and felt like realistic.
Yeah, I agree. I like the word you used there, Ian, intentional, because I felt that every time we had one of these, it did serve the purpose, and it didn't feel like, you know, a cheap, like, oh, we need to get them together.
Right.
But I also love, because of the Walter and Maude, the secret love affair that they had, that anytime like the people interacting with them didn't know. So like in that scene, Fitz is interacting with Walter, and Walter knows that, you know, like he loves Fitz's sister, but Fitz doesn't know, and Fitz just sees it as
Fitz
Walter.
Is so dumb though. Like, I mean, Fitz should really know. Like, come on. Like, they're just like staring at each other longingly during suppers. Like,
Fitz doesn't care about anybody but himself, though. So
I know Fitz is the worst.
Yeah.
I will say I actually disagree with you guys a little bit. I thought some of the specific one we were talking about, like against the like with the Christmas, that one was great. Some of these, I was just like, guys, you just like decided that some people had to meet here. Some of them I thought were extremely convenient. I just like didn't care. It's the same in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, you know, everything is huge, and then like Arya just wanders off into the wilderness and she just meets up with a character that everybody's been looking for. I'm like, okay, but I'm like, I don't care because I want these people to interact. But I'm like, this is unlikely. Normally around Lev, because Lev is just a crazy character. Like Lev just like walks out of a scene and then just into another person's life, and then
Lev's just a weasel. That's like in his character. Like he's just sneaking all around and getting into too much shenanigans.
I think the biggest one for me was when Lev leaves Russia and then he like accidentally ends up in Wales, like at the same mine that Billy is in. I'm like, okay, like
that's fair.
This is a little on the note, especially because it's not like it's just like he's then there. It's like then people then go to Russia later and see Grigori. So it's like they're all. I'm like, I'm fine with this, but it was a little convenient.
Sure.
Yeah, I think actually, if you think of Lev's entire journey, everywhere he ended up, it was kind of
he's
convenient.
The glue. He's the glue. He brings
Lev
it all
is the
together.
whole of this.
Back to Sanderson. I see. Okay.
Yeah, because then he even goes. I mean, even when he's in in America, and he impregnates the woman that Gus wanted to originally marry. So it's like that weave together
I
there
will
as
say,
well.
Lev is hilarious though. Like I hate him, but he's so funny. Like when he's like, when the dad's like, my daughter's pregnant. He's like, that's not possible. There was that. Okay, actually, there was quite a few times that we didn't use protection. I'm like, idiots. Like
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
I was like, yeah, bemused in a way that was like low-key annoyed at him also. Like when he does reunite with Gregory, and Gregory's like, I've been torn up because we're together now. He's like, I knew you'd get together. It's like, shut up, dude.
I'm definitely curious to see with him and his family what happens next. Lev, for
Yeah,
sure.
me too.
I think obviously anybody that was a baby is going to be a main character.
Yeah.
In the next book. I'm just assuming.
Everybody's got to have babies so that we have our next cast.
Actually, this is my criticism of this book in general, which is that if a man and a woman aren't already having a baby with another of the opposite gender and they meet, they're going to have a baby. Like, it's like they're just, everybody's just like having a baby all the time. And I'm just like, okay, I know you have to like populate the next books, but can some people just have a conversation? Like, yeah, like, it's just
Look, man, birth control wasn't as effective back then. All right.
It was just silly. Like I'm just like all the time. But
so Ethel and Fitz.
Right?
So Ethel's first kid was Fitz. Was the second one the guy she married? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So that will be a different dynamic.
Half siblings, yeah.
Yeah.
And then because there'll be two half siblings. So it'll be Fitz's kid, whose name is Boy. What's going on there? Does he have a real name?
I don't know.
I don't remember if it said his name.
I don't remember if they
just like forget to name a character and he just calls
surely
Robin
not
Hobb,
because that.
And then he's like Robin, quick, I need a name, and she's like, I don't know, Boy. He's like, thank you.
Perfect. I think he had a name. I just can't remember if it ever said. It's not important. All right, we'll find out next.
I did really love that scene though of like that. Him finally meeting his son and like Ethel.
Oh, that was a great scene at the end. Yeah, that was very. I don't know. She like played into his like, I guess like it was interesting because in that scene it's almost like she used his class against him. While before she was kind of like a victim of his class. In the end, she's like, I know if I introduce this child to you, you have to say something to him or look at him. And so it's almost like it was the summary of like her finding a way to overcome like the restrictions of class to get her way in the end anyway. I thought it was a great moment for her character.
That's a brilliant way of saying that. Yeah, it was great.
I really...
Billy. So go ahead, Josh.
No, I really hope that Ethel's in the next book because she was my favorite in this book. I mean, I loved a lot of the characters, but she was my number one favorite in the book, and just everything that she went through, and then how she finishes kind of on top at the end. And I do hope that even though we get the next generation, I hope that I don't know, a legacy character like her continues.
I think Ethel also had the biggest character growth. Like when I think about
for sure
who everybody is at the beginning and who they are at the end, it would be Ethel and Billy,
but
especially Ethel. And most people, like some of them changed. Like I would say Walter changed, but they were still like fundamentally the same kind of person. Whereas I feel like Ethel was like this like scared teenager that was like in over her head, and then near the end she's like really like a strong-willed woman that like is like, no, I'm gonna do this. Also the scene where her husband thinks that she's gonna be like, I would never do this, and she's like, maybe I'd do it, and he just has a meltdown. That's so funny.
Well, yeah, that's right. When she realizes that she would be better than him.
Parliament, yeah.
No, maybe that's why I like those two characters the most, because they did have probably the longest, or at least with the exception of maybe Gregory.
Yeah, Gregory
probably the most
also
significant character arcs in the book.
Yeah. Well, they're also kind of like, in some ways, they feel like the heart of the story. I mean, Billy's our first POV that we get in the prologue, and then Ethel is introduced very quickly after, and she's the first person who really finds herself like thrust into a sticky situation with everything that happens between her and Fitz, and obviously, like I saw that coming from a mile away, all the stuff with Fitz and everything, and so I was really pleased by her character arc. That like. I think it could have gone in a very different direction, but I thought it was so satisfying to read her story. So in some ways, like I agree with you, Josh, that like I would like to see her in the second book just because she's a great character, but I don't necessarily feel like I need anything else from her character at this point. So if she's not there like prevalently, then I think it'll be okay for me.
Yeah, that's
I
valid.
would say with Grigori, Grigori's station in life changed the most, and he did change, but he also like fundamentally was this guy who like took care of people and like stood up for what was right and like was exhausted by corruption, and like that's kind of who he is at the end too. He just has more confidence and power and able to like affect change. Whereas I feel like Ethel, like her who she was, changed more throughout the story, if that made sense in terms of like coming into herself.
Mm.
But I also did really like Grigori was also one of my favorites. Like I thought he was great. I think the Russia plotline was probably my least favorite because every single character around Grigori was uninteresting to me. So I'm curious to see how you guys feel about that.
I want the Russian plot line between the books. Like I want to see the revolution. You know,
Yeah.
like I'd rather see that. No, I mean I think I liked it more than the USA plot lines because that wasn't much there.
Okay, that's true. The USA didn't have a lot of stuff, so that's true.
But it's probably my fourth of the five main kind of the main storylines. But I mean, I did like seeing Grigori quite a bit through this. How he's he's taking care of his another one where I mean I guess we have a theme here where we have just a lot of illegitimate kids here because he's raising his nephew basically. But seeing his story arc as well, how his I forget his wife's name, Katerina. Yeah, Katerina. How she she loves him at the end, and but at the beginning, he was so heartbroken because he loved her, and just everybody loves Lev. And I think Lev is one of those characters. I think we all know a Lev.
Yeah,
like
he actually reminds me of a very specific person in my life.
Yeah, it's just like Lev is just one of those people that is life is easy for them and things bounce their way and they screw things up and then it still bounces their way. And I mean, because he basically impregnates a mafia don's daughter basically. And then
that was kind of interesting because Grigori like changes a lot throughout the story. Yeah, but with Lev, it's like his circumstances are constantly changing. But at the start of the story and at the end of the story, he's still the same person.
Yeah,
he doesn't experience.
Some people are like that,
which I think is fine. I think like his character is that he'll never change, and that's not laziness. That's intentional again. So, which
I know this is like bare bones, like you feel like. I mean, I think Lev is like a dirtbag. But in terms of like bare bones giving him some credit or like some interesting characterization is that one thing I don't like is when somebody's like, oh, we want this person to be bad. Stephen King is the worst for this. He's one of my favorites. Like they want somebody to be bad. And it's like, also he kicked that puppy. And
I knew you were going to say kick the dog.
He saw a random black guy. So he had a really good word that he had to say about that. And it's like, so I like that sometimes like when Grigori and Lev met again, and Grigori's like, "You're gonna come back to Russia," and Lev's like, "No, like I can't. Like I have a daughter. Like I love my daughter." And he's like, "It's different because I never met. Like he was just an idea, my son here, but like I know, like she's my daughter." And it's like, yeah, loving your kid is like a pretty like low bar in terms of like a positive trait. But we also in the same book have Fitz, who has two kids and couldn't give a shit about either of them. So it's like there is like some redeem. He's like, "No, I'm not going to abandon my kid," and it's like, okay, Lev is not a total dirtbag. He's just mostly a dirtbag.
And I think that's kind of the story that Ken Follett was trying to tell, where like there's not really evil, like there's evil things that happen, but it's not like good versus evil in this war, and there's not like just like no person is purely just evil here. While like with Pillars of the Earth, there was a character that like truly was just a hateable character. That's not the case here. Like Lev and Fitz, yes, they're really dislikable people, but they also have moments. Like sometimes Fitz's interactions with Maud, or even with his wife, even though he was unfaithful, like he'd have like kind things to do and say. And I'm kind of curious to see like how that's going to carry over into book 2 because of the fact that World War II is a much more black and white. Like we have a bad group of people and we have a less so, and I'm just kind of curious, like the characters that kind of get ensnared in the Nazi storyline, how they're going to be characterized in book 2.
Fitz is like such an interesting character to me because he always landed on the side of like I don't like him and he did the wrong thing, but he always made me feel like maybe this is the moment where he doesn't. Like I felt like at any point in the novel he could have taken a turn to be like a full-out villain or taken a turn for redemption, and he never really did either. He just kind of maintained this like sometimes I do almost the right thing, and sometimes I do the shitty thing, and like he was a very realistic character in that way. Like I didn't feel like he was evil, and even like I would, obviously say everything he did with Ethel was like A, unethical, and B, like shitty to her and her son. But I do think that he actually did feel bad about that, which like isn't like he still should have done better. But it's like he's just like, oh, like I got her pregnant, like go off with her. He was like, oh, I love this girl, but now like I kind of screwed up and I don't know what to do, and I'm a lord and I'm not used to having conflict, so like get out of here. Like,
Yeah.
it felt more like he didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Because there was that moment also where like he asks to see Ethel and she considers it and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think, like, did you think that she was going to, and how do you think the story would have been different had she chosen to like go see him in the end and kind of reconcile in some ways? Like, did you see that as like a point of possible redemption for Fitz, or did you see it more as like him just kind of trying to continue a dalliance that he was interested in?
I don't know if there's redemption for Fitz.
Sure.
I think Fitz could have been redeemed. Like that's the thing. We're all like a couple choices away from, like it's all steps and degrees. And like, yeah, sure. If Ethel had went and met him and then he continued to be how he was when she was a teenager, then that wouldn't have been redemption. But if he had realized that like, oh, he missed out on this and he actually did really care for her, and he like set up that he could be with her and like cared for her son, like I could see that being somebody who then becomes a person that's a good person. Like, it's we're all orientating ourselves every day with like little steps towards the people we want to be in the future. And so like that's what's interesting about Fitz, is that I feel like he wants to be a good person, and he's just like embedded in this like tradition, and like the fact that he doesn't care to know how to change. And then so he makes the wrong choices and the bullheaded choices. And
so do you think he's like a good person who's a victim of like his privilege in some ways?
No, I wouldn't call him a good person. I think that he had the potential to be a good person, and he continuously chose to get off that path. But not in a way where I thought he was irredeemable. Like maybe I'm forgetting something. I don't think there's anything like completely irredeemable he did in the book.
I mean, I wasn't a big fan of how he interacted with Billy at the end and all that.
Yeah, that's terrible. But like if like, after that, let's say 5 years later, because they still live near each other, that's still technically his like kid's uncle, right? He comes and he's like, hey, this is terrible. Like, what if we work together?
My bad, bro. My bad.
and we like try to make England better or Wales better or whatever. Like, I'm just saying that like he didn't do anything that was irredeemable in the future to me. Whereas somebody like William.
No, I mean he's not totally evil, but I think he also had the opportunity. I mean, it seems like for so many characters, like war changes them, and it didn't. I mean, it physically changed him, but it didn't really change him, as fundamentally as like you see with a lot of other characters.
Which is actually interesting
in real
because
life.
He also got like really injured, so you'd think that would like have had like a scare for him of some sort or anything.
Yeah, but then at the end, he's still like attacking Billy and all of that.
I loved at the end where Billy was like, hey, he had courage, and I'm not going to attack him. I'm just going to say you guys are history. I'm like, oh, that was such a good line.
One relationship I liked in the book, it was a minor one, but we haven't really talked about Germany. Walter and his father, I think, were perfectly kind of two characters showing kind of a progressive thinker and a more conservative thinker, at odds on just about every side of the conflict from the very beginning, the beginning stages of the war, how, Otto, I think his name was Otto, how Otto wanted to be all in, and Walter was more tempered. And then throughout, just their different thoughts. I really enjoyed that dynamic, because that was one of those things that just felt like super real to me. It felt like, we have the father who's the older generation who thinks this, more black and white. And then you have the Walter who's not only a different generation, he's in love with someone from England and just has a very, very different viewpoint on the war as a whole. I really enjoyed those scenes with those two.
Yeah, I did too. And I think there's a really great moment in the book that is really sticking out to me that kind of exemplifies the difficulty of their relationship and the strain, and just how like a lot changed over the war, but a lot didn't too. And that's the scene where they are married, they've announced it, they go to the opera, and then they're kind of hoping for this moment of acceptance, but then everyone hisses at her and she like flees. And it's kind of this moment where like they're hoping that on the other side of this war, like, yes, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but the world has changed and everyone's going to get on board with this. But they do like publicly reject it at the same time. And so it's like, yes, a lot of change did come from this war, but it's not done. There is still kind of like that incrementalism that like we're experiencing here. It's not an overnight change. Like we can't just flip a switch. It's still constantly battling this past way of thinking, you know?
Yeah, that scene was kind of heartbreaking.
It was tough.
Because
but
finally
it was
we get them together and she's happy. She's married to, you know, the man she loves, and the war's over and now they can be together, but they can't. I mean, they'll be together, but not accepted in the society like she had hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great.
And in Germany too, which has so many like sanctions and like money to pay and all this stuff, that they're just like living so broke.
Yeah, definitely not the fate they wanted, but
again,
that brings
me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
That brings me to my biggest problem with this book. I complained to you guys about it for a while. Do you guys want to guess what it is?
Is that nobody died?
Nobody dies.
Nobody fucking dies in this book. What is that? That's insane. That is insane. That is insane. I'll say it 3 times. Actually, I'm joking a little bit. I came to terms with it after the book, thinking of like, as if you were gonna like compile a like historiography of World War One, you would like obviously use people that had lived through the war, because that's supposed to be the only people you'd be able to talk to. So I was just like, okay, like in this, it's like he's just collecting the stories of the people who survived the war. So I got, but man, it's ridiculous that nobody dies. Like there's nobody important that dies in this book at all. Like the most important character that dies is Lev's shitty father-in-law. I'm like,
well,
how's that the most important
There's
character?
also that scene where Fitz and his wife are like at somebody's place because they go visit her family, and then like all the storming people come in.
Yeah, but her brother was never in the book until.
No, but it still felt like, oh snap, there are stakes, by the way. So
probably the biggest one was there was a neighbor of Billy and Ethel whose son was killed
at the very beginning, like because
I mean those were I mean but I mean I think that's a valid criticism.
I don't know what would have solved it, because I think everybody's story ended well. Like it's not like I'm like, oh, like this person should have died. It just was like they maybe just should have been better supporting characters. I actually think that would be like a better verbalization of my critique. I felt like almost all of the supporting characters in like that isn't a POV, they were all pretty flat to me. Like there's a couple exceptions. Like I liked Ethel's second husband, and then like some of the like I like Katerina, like stuff like that, but most of like all of the like soldier friends were just nothing. They were just names. Like they just
there was one there was one that was the young kid who they who he ran or something, and then they killed him like firing.
That was like a couple pages. So like,
but I mean that, but you're right. To me, like as far as the non-main characters, I mean they weren't that vivid.
One side character that did stand out to me, and I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are on like the choice with this character, was Gus's eventual love interest and her having like one eye. What did you feel like there's any significance to that, other than what did you guys take from their relationship and from that?
I just took like it was kind of like what happened at the end of the book, where he didn't expect his parents to accept someone like that. Like she's lower class, she works like basic job like a reporter.
Right, a reporter. So it's like what the world could be, I guess.
Is it physically ugly, even though like it seems like she wasn't, except for the eye, but like in terms of like to his parents,
she might be
abnormality.
Like,
and so like I think it was more just like he's from like the upper class and he's marrying somebody that like is beneath him, and how that like, which kind of like mirrors like Otto and Walter and stuff like that too. So
but there's like acceptance on that side instead. So okay, interesting. I was curious.
But I mean, I do like how he explores just in several different ways. I love because authors will do this. Like Kay does this a lot, and Erickson does this, where you have a similar relationships, and you just explore them in different ways with different people. and kind of driving home the same themes, you know, like those of class and those of generation in this book. You get to see it a few different ways. And I think it works really well, especially because we get, you know, I don't know if we could say 5 distinctly different cultures, but we can at least say that, you know, there's 3 or 4 different distinctive cultures here. Like obviously the Russian scenes feel a lot different than the England and Wales feel pretty similar. But
I would forget sometimes they were in Wales. Like it would just be the spellings of things. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's very interesting how both of those things. I mean, we talked at the very beginning about class, but even just the generational divide. And it'll be interesting, like going forward in the future books, you know, how that will happen too. Where we have different generations.
We'll inevitably have like I hope we would have, because this would be realistic. What I would like to see is it doesn't necessarily have to be Walter. I'm going to use Walter as an example. Is if like Walter's an old man in like the beginning of the 3rd book, and then like his grandson or whatever is like on the civil rights side, and then Walter is the old conservative. Because that's what happens, right? It's like time progresses, and it's like the people that were fighting the battle for progress then become the people that are like clinging to that progress that they made, and so I think that would be interesting. So I hope we get like some form of character doing that.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting you say that, because I think it shows that like even like the more radical change and things like that people think are so radical is in some ways still like that incremental change, because like you've got the people who are saying like, oh, women should be able to vote, but if they were like everybody should be able to vote, then it'd be like, no, you're insane, you know, like we're not quite there yet. And so it's more and more like, I guess, depicting how it's a constant change that takes place rather than like everything changing at once. It's all over time. It's all this series of changes that takes place. Even the most big changes are just a part of the grand scheme of things. So
yeah, I agree with that. Also, to finish my point about nobody dying, because it pissed me off, I thought Robert died, like his cousin. He disappears during the war, and he wasn't even a main character. But that's an example of like a character that matters.
Could have died.
It's like it's you know, Walter's cousin, like he cares about him, and then it also like influences Walter's life after the war. So it's like, okay, I will accept that. And then he's just like, nah, he was just a prisoner, but now he's a Nazi, and I'm like, ah. But I guess we needed one person
good as dead
to become a Nazi. So
sure.
What would be interesting too? I mean, because you never know. I mean, generations. Maybe one of Walter's and Maude's kids will be like that. So, you know,
I think it'll be surprising to see where everyone's loyalties kind of lie in book 2. So
this is a complete guess. I have like literally no information. I would be surprised if one of their kids, or at least like maybe their kids like have a friend or something, doesn't become one of the Hitler Youth, and then either like doubles down or realizes that it's a problem and then like leaves. But like I think the Hitler Youth being the timeline that we're getting all these people coming of age is too prominent of a thing to not be involved in a significant way.
Yeah,
sure,
probably right.
All right, anything else? We've been at it about an hour.
I don't think we really talked about Gus much. I feel like we should talk a little bit more about Gus and the American stuff. What did you guys think of it?
I mean, I guess we talked about his Rosa. Was that her name? Yeah, Rosa was who he ended up marrying at the end. Yeah, I mean, he was another one that had kind of the parents that wanted him to do a certain thing. And I'm trying to remember, did he get injured in the war? No. Am I misremembering?
I don't think so.
No. Okay, I was misremembering with him.
But yeah, he was
foiled by Lev.
So late.
What's that?
Yes, he's foiled by Lev. His plotline started so late. And one like minor thing that I know about the 3rd book, which makes sense to me, is just that it focuses more on America, which would make sense because it's doing the civil rights movement and all that stuff. And so I wonder if because of that, he kind of like, and that America joined this war later, that he kind of like backloaded, because like there was almost no America in this until like the very end. And then even then, Gus was just kind of like going around doing secretive stuff. Which I did like him meeting with Walter, and then like I thought it was funny when he like knew what was going on with Maude, and then that girl was like oh no, you love her, and then he's like, he couldn't say anything, and then later on she's like, you knew they were married, and he's like,
yeah.
So that would be an awkward situation.
Yeah. That might be. I mean, that could be. I think a good prediction there, Kyle. That maybe we just got enough of him to kickstart, some of the people that will be in America, because really in America all we have are him and then Lev and the Vielovs. I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, I would imagine maybe some other characters will emigrate at some point.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I imagine so. Like I imagine, based on the trajectory of the series focus, that like the grandkids, I feel like more of the grandkids will be in America.
Yeah. That would make sense. And it will be interesting 2 generations later if we have Grigori's descendants and Lev's descendants, Russia and US and Cold War and all of that. So
I did, and I won't tell you guys, I won't say anything about it. But I did Google a spoiler just to know.
What's wrong with you?
No. I just wanted to know if there was anybody that was in all 3 books. Because I was just like interested to know.
Yeah.
So like I know the answer to that. I won't tell you guys that. But like I was just like I just wanted to know if like there was any connective tissue throughout the whole trilogy, and so I Googled that. So I have like I wouldn't even consider it a spoiler, but I have one piece of information that I'm not telling you guys. But
I mean, I would guess so. There was a great book I read by Kate Atkinson, A God in Ruins, that shows one character kind of as a youth, and then another timeline where it's about his daughter, and then another timeline where it's about his granddaughter, and he's in all 3 timelines. So I think it's certainly possible. I mean, the maths. So
the opening scene of the last book should just be like all of the characters from the first book dying of old age.
There we go. Morbid beginning.
If nobody dies until the very ending of book 3, then I will have a problem. So.
hey, some of their kids could die in the second book.
Sure.
But like it could be like that chapter in The Stand, No Great Loss, where it's just like people going around and being like, and then he went for a jog and his heart exploded. No great loss. It could be like that, but instead, like that was a great loss.
Okay.
I've had a lot of coffee, guys, and so.
All right. Anything else? We covered it.
It's a great book.
No, this book was great. Really liked it. Looking forward to the second one.
I'm nervous about book 3. Everyone seems to think it's the weakest. So
yeah.
I agree. It's also like material that I know better, like in terms of just like learning about it throughout time. So it might be less interesting of like learning about the history, but we'll see.
I'm excited though with the second book, because I'd probably say 2 out of every 3 people I talk to likes the second book the most. The third person liking the first book. So
interesting. I would reverse those numbers. Like I see occasional people like the second book the most, but most people that I've talked to like Fall of Giants the most.
Interesting.
I don't know anybody who likes the third book the most. So that's not
looking good. Yeah.
Well, even if it's in the same ballpark as this first one, I think we're in for a treat when we get to this. So, well, thank you, those that were in the chat. Appreciate you hanging out this evening. If you're watching this on the replay, drop a comment, and of course, follow these guys. And again, if you weren't here at the very beginning, we are going to be reading the second book in August, and then we'll be reading the third book in November. So, end of August, early September, we'll be having a chat about Winter of the World. I had to look over and see what it was called. So we'll be doing that sometime then. So thanks for hanging out this evening. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Kyle. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, chat. We will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.